Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Tuesday class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha Tat Savitra Vareneyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat Asto Ma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehna Bhunaktu Sabiriam Karvavahit Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. Let's open our Mahabharata books. Page number 216. And we know that a gruesome war is going on. And this is the 7th day of that war. And altogether, the war lasted 18 days. So this is only a 7th day. Bheeshma deploys his troops in a circular galaxy on the 7th morning of the war, the Mandal view. The Drishtadhyuman and Arjun form a Vajra view. Both formations maneuver quickly and are almost impregnable. The din of conches rises and the armies fly at each other. At a spinning parameter of the Mandal view, Drona faces Virat and Drupad. Ashwathama faces Shikhandi. Duryodhana comes up against Drishtadhyuman. Nakul and Sahadev, their uncle Shalya. Vind and Anuvind confront Arjun. Bhim faces Kritvarman. Abhimanyu holds up Chitrasen. Vikaran and Dushashan at once. Ghatotkach and Bhagdat meet again like two thunderheads. The Rakshas Alambush, whom Satyaki wounded 2 days ago, returns to battle, healed by his own occult powers, and faces the Yadav once more. Bhurishra fights hand to hand with the Drishtketu. Srutya's duels Yudhishthir, while next to them, Chekitan faces Kripa. Today seems destined more for fervid duels than general battle. Arjun says to his dark Sarthi, the Pitama thinks his soldiers will be safe inside his mandal. Look, Krishan, the Trigats are spoiling for a fight, and they shall not live to see the sunset. Ride at them, my lord. It is time the earth was lighter by their burden. Krishan sets his horses at the Trigats. Nestling in a whirl of the Mandal view, Arjun pulls on the Gandhiv's string and the ground shakes. The Pandav loses an Andreastra at the enemy. The missile flares up into the sky above the Kaurav legions and hangs there. A gleaming jewel. From it, thousands of arrows fall in a bright torrent on the Duryodhana's men. As they run for their lives, Bhishma's careful view is broken in slivers. Susharma has to flee. So Susharma is a king of the Trigats and brother of Bhanumati. And who's a Bhanumati? Wife of Duryodhana. And you can see that how close-knit all these warriors are. That's why they say it was almost like a family feud. Duryodhana's roar rings across Kurukshetra, but a Kshatriya in a silver chariot yoked to white steeds, his hair like mane behind him, pale as his horses, rides to challenge Arjun. It is Bhishma, and the Pandav soldiers run every way from him. Arjun stands his ground and meets Bhishma's charge with a scorching salvo. Duryodhana yells, Susharma, ride with me. We must watch the Pitama's flanks. He thunders after his grandsire and Susharma after him. The duel between Bhishma and Arjuna lights up the field with the coruscating astras that lock on high and then die away in cascades of sparks. Both warriors' bodies shine uncannily with the power of the weapons they invoke, and one cannot look at them for long All around Kurukshetra, the fighting stops. Every soldier gazes in awe at the duel between Bhishma and Arjun. They have never seen anything like it before. Both fight from a protective enclave of Kshatriyas, so they cannot be surprised from a flank or from behind. Then Drona, not content to be a spectator, attacks Virat with a roar. Today that king is prepared for the Acharya. Swifter than Drona expects, Virat breaks the Brahman's bow in his hands, cuts down his banner, kills his Sarthi. Drona seizes up another bow and dispatches Virat's Sarthi with a light like a shaft. Virat's son, Shank, rides up at once and takes his father into his rath. The two then fight Drona together, while the Kuru Acharya drives his own chariot and holds them off with a stream of fire. Drona finds young Shank a formidable adversary and loses an astra like a meteor at the boy. The shaft takes the prince in his chest, cuts through his armor like butter, and breaks into his heart. Shank dies without a sound, his blood splattering his father. This is the third son he has lost to the war. With a howl, Virat leaps out of the chariot and runs away. Drona fights on in icy calm, killing 100 men every moment. Ashwathama and Shikhandi fight across the field, evenly matched and brilliant. Shikhandi strikes Ashwathama with 3 arrows in swift succession. Crying aloud in pain, Ashwathama cuts Shikhandi's Sarthi's head from his neck with a wedge-tipped arrow and kills his horses and shafts through their eyes. Undaunted, Shikhandi leaps down and sword in hand rushes at Ashwathama. Ashwathama covers him in fire, but Drupad's son whirls his blade round and strikes down every shaft. He is a hawk fighting in the sky, the whirling sword his wings. Just then Satyaki rides up. Shikhandi flings his sword at Ashwathama. A streak of light climbs into Satyaki's chariot and flashes away. Alambush arrives to face Satyaki. They fight, and the Rakshas uses Maya, making himself invisible to confound his enemy. The Yadav pierces him with a subtle astra, which lights up the forest devil's body so he cannot vanish anymore. Alambush flies up into the sky and lashes the Vrishni with a storm of arrows. Satyaki shoots an astra at him, and it pursues the Rakshas, blasting a score of livid barbs at him every moment. Alambush flees, and Satyaki kills 100 Kaurav soldiers to celebrate. Duryodhana seeks out Drishtdyuman again. Drishtdyuman smashes Duryodhana's chariot wheels, but Duryodhana leaps down to the ground and battles on. Shakuni rides up and gives his nephew his chariot, but Drishtdyuman is the quicker archer, and soon, fearing for his life, the Kaurava turns away. Not far from the fire prince, Satyaki still raises Hastinapur's legions. Kritvarman faces Bhim coming into battle. Bhim does not roar today. His silence is exceptional, quite deafening, but he fights as powerfully as ever, and in moments he has slaughtered Kritvarman's horses and cut down his banner. Flying past the Yadav in his chariot, Bhim fetches him a blow with his mace, and Kritvarman collapses with a scream, feeling every bone in his body is broken. Luckily, Shakuni is at hand to save him from Bhim. Now Bhim lets out a full-throated roar, his first of the day. He leaps down from his chariot and like a hurricane sets on the elephants of the Kaurav army. As the sea does the Ganga, the Pandav army quells the Kaurav legions. Not that Duryodhana's warriors fight tamely. No, they are ferocious, they are inspired, but they are small match for Yudhishthir's men. Inexorably, the army of Hastinapur dwindles, as if its soldiers have just one ambition on Kurukshetra, to die, and find the Swarg meant for those killed in battle. In a chariot glowing like the morning sun, Ghatotkach accosts Bhagdat mounted on his white elephant, the lord of the Pragya Jyotishpura. Seems like Indra himself come down to Kurukshetra. And Ghatotkach cannot match the Asur today. Bhagdat kills the horses. Ghatotkach casts a glimmering javelin at the demon, but Bhagdat cuts it in 3 pieces. Ghatotkach wisely leaves the field. The Asur spurs his pale beast forward, and it tramples the Pandav soldiers, gores them dead. Madri's brother Shalya battles Nakul and Sahadev, and the uncle is delighted by his nephew's valor. Even when they wound him sharply, he shouts encouragement to them. But Shalya does not stay his hand because he is fighting his sister's sons. He covers them with arrows like silver hail and soon kills Nakul's Sarthi and horses. In a blink, Sahadev is at his twin's side and his brother leaps nimbly into his chariot. He sees how violently Shalya shoots at Nakul. Sahadev casts a heavy lance at his uncle and fells him. Shalya faints and is driven off the field. High Noon and Yudhishthir and Shrutyavs face each other on the field of the Kurus. The gentle Pandav is a cobra spitting venom. Shrutyavs is a gifted archer, and he strikes Yudhishthir's armor off his back with a blistering volley. Yudhishthir fights on as if he has not noticed. He kills Shrutyav's horses and Sarthi, and the Kaurav warrior runs away without ceremony. Yudhishthir wades into the unprotected enemy, killing 100 men. Elsewhere, Chekitan overwhelms Krip, and the Acharya is carried off the field. 3 of the Duryodhana's brothers attack Abhimanyu from different sides, but not together are they a match for Arjun's son. He breaks their bows in their hands, kills their horses and charioteers, and has them at his mercy. Then he remembers his uncle Bhim's oath that he would kill all Dhritarashtra's sons. Abhimanyu stops himself. Bhishma storms to the Kaurav prince's rescue. Nearby, Arjun says to Krishna, "The old lion and our young one will absorb each other for a while. Come, Krishna, let us range the field and reduce the size of my cousin's army." A wind sowing death, the chariot blows at the Kaurav forces while Abhimanyu holds Bhishma up. Susharma confronts Arjun once more with his legion of Trigarats. They surround the Pandav and fall on him from every side. But it seems Arjun has 100 hands and 100 Gandhivs in them. In moments, blood flying everywhere, half Susharma's men are dead. Stunned by the Pandav's valor, Susharma retreats and a smiling Krishna turns his chariot to seek out Bhishma. Shikhandi rides at Arjun's side. In wonderful synchronicity, the other 4 Pandavas appear there as well, and all of them attack Bhishma. If they can kill him now, the war would be good as won. But Duryodhana, Jayadratha, and a score of others force a way to where Bhishma battles 5 Pandavas and Shikhandi at once. They rain arrows on him from every side, but not one strikes him. Like some unearthly dancer, he cuts them all down. In a moment, Krip, Shalya, Shal, and a mortal Chitrasen are all at Bhisham's side, drawing the Pandav's fire from him. But he has scant need of them. Already he has beaten his grandsons back with some ineffable archery. Bhim, Yudhishthir, and Sahadev have their bows plucked from their hands. Nakul and Arjun are struck down in their chariots. Yudhishthir turns to Shikhandi and cries in a rare fury, "You have sworn to kill him. If you don't hurry, we will all be dead." Shikhandi charges Bhisham's chariot, but the Duryodhana's Kshatriyas have been warned about the oath of Amba. Shalya plunges between Shikhandi and Bhishma, and a duel ensues. Nearby, Bhim and Jayadratha fight. Each has killed the other's horses and smashed the other's chariot. Now they fight on foot, maces ringing together in showers of sparks. Jayadratha is no match for the Pandav. Bhim fells him with a huge stroke, and Jayadratha jumps up and runs. Chitrasen rides up to challenge Bhim, but the son of the wind greets him by flinging his mace at him like a thunderbolt. Chitrasen falls, and his Sarthi rides off with his unconscious Kshatriya. Bhishma confronts Yudhishthir, lord of the Pandav army. Intensely they fight, grandsire and grandson, like old enemies, neither giving an inch. It is hard to believe the same Yudhishthir always worshipped his Pitama. Is harder to conceive Bhishma is his doting grandfather. Bhishma shatters Yudhishthir's chariot. Nakul is nearby, and Yudhishthir climbs into his brother's chariot. The twins and he attacks Bhishma together, but he fights not merely like a man of fourth his age, he fights like five Arjuns. As he holds off the three sons of Pandu, he strews Kurukshetra with their soldiers' corpses. The Trigraths still surround Arjun and shoot at him from every side. They draw him away from Bhishma, fearing that if all the Pandavas combine for long enough against the Pitama, they may well kill him. Arjun makes them pay dearly. He lets a swash of Trigrath blood, but he cannot stem the death Bhishma brings to the Pandav legions. Twilight falls suddenly as if a god above, heart sick of the Karaj on Kurukshetra, carnage of Kurukshetra, sent an astra of darkness to stop it. Conches announced the end of the day's battle. Soldiers across the field put up their arms, blessings kindly fortune that they will live another night, while thousands of their comrades have perished. Today there is a scant celebration in the Pandav camp. The individual duels have gone their way on that seventh day, but at least 10,000 more Pandav soldiers have died than Kaurav. Bhishma has killed most of them. Yudhishthir sits forlorn, while in the camp across Kurukshetra, Duryodhana is excited as a boy. He drinks wine, sitting with Karan, Shakuni, and Dushashan, and predicts the worst is over. They have done everything they could, and they have found Bhishma invincible. This lucky seventh day, the course of the war has turned. Now we shall win. Shakuni says the Pitama is the key to victory. As long as we can keep him safe from Shikhandi, no Pandav or any Kshatriya on earth can kill Bhishma. You made no mistake, Duryodhan, when you made him our Senapati. Karan's eyes are like embers, but he says little tonight of all that burns his heart. Much later that night, across the field of death, when the others are asleep and the moon sinks in the west, one warrior lies awake, and an uncanny transformation comes over him. Shikhandi lies in his bed, sleepless. These 7 days, he has stalked just Bhishma, and whenever he came near the Kuru ancient, another Kaurava had always come between them, even like fate. Shikhandi has hardly shot an arrow at the man he has sworn to kill. Tonight, like every other night, his lean body and his handsome face take on a strange aspect when he is alone. The spirit of Amba comes over Shikhandi, and he feels himself as he was a life ago when he was she. His skin is hers, his thoughts, his senses, his very body, and most of all his obsession with Bhishma and all Amba's, and how she longs to kill him, but not after 2 lives and a death, after all she has endured with any hatred. Amba yearns to kill Bhishma to set him free. She has always loved him, and she knows now how much he suffers, and she knows that he also has always loved her. Amba smiles. Her long wait is almost at an end. Perhaps tomorrow, she tells herself again, she can finally pierce his heart with an arrow. The next chapter, the 8th day, the field of death. Dawn of the 8th day of the war, and Bhishma forms his legions in the expansive Urmi view, the ocean phalanx, its waves of Kshatriyas supplayed a league on either side. Across the field today, Yudhishthir tells Arjun and Dhrishtaman that the most potent view against the Urmi is the Shringtak, the horned phalanx. Arjun is a master of this formation, and soon both armies are ready for the day's bloodletting. Once more conches blare, death's knell, and glazed eyes, legions rush at each other. It is another morning of duels. First, Bhishma meets Bhim, who is in great height, and finds the young lion implacable. The Pandav covers his Pitama's chariot in a cloak of arrows. With such artistry, that those who watch can scarcely believe it of him. Even Bhishma is taken aback at his grandson virtuosity, and before he knows it, Bhim kills his horses and Sarthi and advances menacingly on him. Away to the left, Duryodhan sees Bhishma in danger and flies to the rescue with the force of his brothers. Seeing the Kauravas coming, Bhim immediately loses interest in his grandsire, charges his cousins in joy. They hardly know him how, and 8 sons of Dhritarashtra die, their heads crushed or struck off, or their hearts stopped with whistling shafts. Duryodhan watches helplessly, and Bhim's oath echoes in his mind. He howls at Bhishma, "The monster kills my brothers. While you watch if they are not your grandsons, you don't love me, Bhishma, only the sons of Pandu." Bhishma cries angrily, "You are cruel, Duryodhan. If I did not love you, would I be here fighting at your side? Even when I know you are wrong, if we did not love you, Dhruvan and I could have kept away. When I told you the Pandavas are invincible, you would not listen. The prince you pay is your brother's lives. Every time Bhim sees them, he will kill them as he would swat flies. You tried to save your brothers just now, but could you? Then why you point your finger at me? I am as helpless as you are. All I can say to you is, Duryodhan, prepare to die, and die like a Kshatriya. Keep your mind on the war, not on things that are beyond it." Bhishma runs away in disgust and rides off to vent his grief on the Pandav legions. Noon again, and the Pandavas attack the Pitama altogether, but he blazes on the earth like the sun at his vertex. Bhim wheels away in frustration to demolish the Kaurav elephants, while Nakul and Sahadev turn on Duryodhan's cavalry, cutting down hundreds of fine horses and picking up their fallen riders when they stood defenseless on the ground. The Kaurav legions suffer, but this is as nothing compared to the massacre Bhishma and Drona bring to the Pandava army. On the eve of the war, an unusual young warrior presented himself before Arjun and said, "My mother heard about the war that was to be and sent me to fight for you." His green eyes were somehow familiar, and Arjun felt a surge of affection for the lean, handsome youth. Arjun said, "Who is your mother, young Kshatriya?" The young man smiled, "The Nag queen Ulupi." The long ago Cineas night swam up before Arjun's eyes, and with a cry he clasped his son in his arms. That youth, Irvan, had proved himself as brave and skilled as Abhimanyu. He had been a bane of the enemy these past 7 days. He brought a small legion of Nag warriors with him, and they fought with eerie weapons and serpentine sorceries, raising whole columns of Kaurav soldiers. Today, Irvan watches Shakuni, who fights more with cunning than valor, always making sure he faces only inferior antagonists, whom he kills without mercy. Irvan sees Shakuni kill common Pandav soldiers by shooting them in the back, and he rides to challenge the Gandhar king. Irvan's channeling Nags ride with him, and they account for a good part of Shakuni's legion. Inexorably, Irvan moves nearer Shakuni, who cringes before him. He cannot escape anywhere because the prince's snake warriors ring him around. Duryodhan cries to Alambush, "Arjun's Nag brat is dangerous. Kill him." Alambush flies through the air at Irvan, intent on fighting his way to Shakuni, whom he is determined to finish today. Ulupi's son doesn't see Alambush. Mantled in Maya, fly at him from above. Alambush materializes abruptly before an astonished Irvan and hacks his head off with a massive sword. Bhishma, Drona, and Ashwatthama take fire to the Pandava army, even as if they are the 3 points of Shiva's Trishul. The Pandavas themselves cannot contain them today, not when they combine, when Irvan dies. Ghatotkacha leaps into the forefront of battle. He too fights with Maya, and Duryodhana has to contend with Bhim's terrific son. Today, Ghatotkacha attacks the Kaurav king himself and the Kshatriyas that defend him. Bhishma cries to Drona. Duryodhana is hurt, fly to him. Drona, Jadrath, Ashwathama, and a score of Kaurav warriors peel away towards Duryodhana. Kurukshetra rings with Ghatotkacha's roars when he sees more of the enemy coming to challenge him. Yudhishthir hears that sound and cries to Bhim. Ghatotkacha is beset by 100 men. In a moment, Bhim is beside him. They fight back to back. Enemy foot soldiers shut their ears and flee. Ghatotkacha and Bhim destroy Duryodhana's crack guard, which surrounds him when he goes into battle. Mortal screams and wild roars mingle, two rivers flowing into the sea of death, red-eyed to see his guard slain, old hatred flaring high. Duryodhana rushes at Bhim with Ashwathama at his side. Laughing in their faces, Bhim pushes them back easily. 1,000 soldiers from both sides stream forward and the battle spreads out again. Bhim is full of incredible strength. He bristles with weapons. He flings 100 maces at the enemy. He is invincible. He seems victorious, and no one can stand before him. And when roaring, his mace raised high, he charges Duryodhana. The Kaurav feels the touch of death on him and bolts. Beside Bhim, Ghatotkacha is like 5 storms. And so Makabra, that Kaurav soldiers run at just the sight of him. Or else they stand rooted in terror and he murders them. Duryodhana rides trembling to Bhishma. He cries, "You must kill Ghatotkacha or the war is lost." Bhishma says impatiently, "I cannot leave this battle. Take Bhagdat. He turned the Rakshas back yesterday." Bhagdat comes on Supritak, his white elephant. Word flies to the Pandavas of the Asur's arrival, and quickly Bhim, Ghatotkacha, Abhimanyu, Draupadi's sons, and some others too stand together to meet the Lord of Pragya Jyotishpura. Bhagdat charges Bhim. The Pandav warriors cover the elephant with spears and arrows, and the beast's head is slick with blood, red on white. Still it comes on, making for Bhim. All around Kshatriyas in chariots and foot soldiers cover before the pale Leviathan. When Bhagdat's elephant is almost upon Bhim, the king of the Dasrans confronts Suprita on his own elephant. This grey animal is barely half Suprita's size, but its heart is great and brave, and it charges the bigger animal, goring its side. So it turns away from Bhim with a scream. The Dasaran king's elephant will not retreat before Suprita's trumpeting or his short rushes. He stands like a rock, and Suptrik backs away from him. The mammoth's trumpeting rings across the field, and neither will give away. Furious at being frustrated by a mortal, Bhagdat loses a caliphic volley at the Dashrath king. Sensing peril to its master, now his elephant turns away. The Kaurav army roars from 10,000 throats and teams forward behind Supratik. But the Pandav warriors have had time to recover. Now many of them face Bhagdat at once, and he can make no headway through their ranks. Supratik's rage at being pierced by 100 lances and arrows shakes Kurukshetra. Arjun joins Bhim, Ghatotkacha, and the rest. Behind Bhagdat, Duryodhana calls up a legion of 5,000 soldiers and sends them to fight near the Asura on his elephant. Another massacre. Bhagdat kills thousands from elephant pack, and so too Bhim, Arjun, and Ghatotkacha from their chariots. Direst of all is Arjun. He has news of the death of Parvan, and his wrath is dreadful. Hissing like a serpent, he fights with tears stinging his eyes for his channeling son, who was his mother Ulupi's only child. Arjun lets a cataract of blood, human fat, its froth. As he fights, he cries to his Sarthi, "Now I see why Yudhishthir would take just 5 towns to prevent this war. It is more horrible than I ever imagined. My son is dead. What will I tell his mother? How many mothers have lost their boys on this hellish field? All this killing. And for what? For one man's vanity, for Duryodhana's ravening envy. How does fate allow this? He is quiet for a while, but the tide of arrows still flames from his bow, as if someone else was the archer. Krishna drives his horses in silence, immaculately. Arjun cries again, surely it is better to die a beggar than kill these millions for a throne. How I hate this war. More than anyone else, Shakuni is to blame for all this murdering. He first corrupted Duryodhan. If only someone had killed him before he ever came to Hastinapur. Look how I wilt them, and they crumple and lie down to sleep forever. Oh, look at the blood spurt from the mouths of their wounds. How I wish I had never been born a Kshatriya. He is quiet again before Krishna hears him sob. Arvan, how glad I was to see you, my son. Now I wish I had never met your mother. I would not have to bear this grief that tears my heart more painfully than any arrow. Then he roars, Krishna, they have killed my boy. Ride at them. I will make a sea of their blood. As Krishna rides at the enemy, Arjun's arrows mow down the Kaurav soldiers in a russet flash flood, glimmering in the last light of the day. Bheeshma sees Arjun raging and comes to contain the Pandav. Meanwhile, the butchering continues everywhere. Hundreds die each moment. By now, their screams, the shouts, and the roars of those who kill them have become commonplace. They who have been at war for 8 days are inured to, to these sounds. Bhim still strews the field with corpses, as if killing were as natural to him as drawing breath. He is dripping gore again, for often he leaps down from his chariot and goes among the enemy, bludgeoning them with his mace, and their blood splashes over him copiously. Then he climbs back into Vishoka's chariot and fights with bow and arrows. Ghatotkach fights near his father, and he is more terrible than Bhim. Bhagdat is there in the steaming, mindless thick of battle, somehow containing Bhim's Rakshas son. Suptrik, the elephant, is disdainful of the arrows that pierce him. Suddenly, a roar on the field eclipses every other sound. Bhim has hewn his way through the Kaurav ranks and come face to face with a knot of Duryodhana's brothers, who huddle together in terror. There are 8 of them, and the sight of him exploding through the rest of the legion paralyzes them. Whimpering, they stand, transfixed in their chariots, and he makes short, brutal work of all 8. They die with hardly a cry, as if they are grateful he delivered them from the long fear of him that darkened their lives. Duryodhana sees the slaughter from a way off, and his howls rock Kurukshetra. He cries out like some mythic beast that had 8 more of its limbs cut away by a shining hunter. Bhishma hears that awful sound. He sees the Kaurav army shrink from the enemy everywhere, and he gives the signal for the conscious to sound. Numb with the killing they have seen and done, the soldiers leave the field, their heads bent, neither victor nor vanquished speaking. Their experience of these days beyond the ken of words. The field they have left for the brief reprieve of night is a bizarre spectacle, with corpses sprouted everywhere. Now there seem to be more of the dead than the living on Kurukshetra. Both armies, especially the Kaurav, have waned. On their way back to the camps, the men step wearily over heedless trunks and severed heads struck off as savagery that their bodies are nowhere near. Those still alive often recognize a friend's features on such a face, jeweled arms live with bracelets and rings glinting in the last rays of the sun. Arms hacked from their soldiers' shoulders and hands cut off at the wrist, clawing the air, or clasping a sword, a javelin, a bow. or if for life itself or salvation. These lie everywhere. Among them lie the carcasses of horses and elephants, their eyes still staring, killed in a war that has little to do with their species. Today, not all the dead are gathered for burning. There are too many corpses, and the living are too exhausted. Finally, the wait for the jackals, hyenas, and wolves, the kites, the vultures, and wild dogs is rewarded. They feast without favor for Pandav or Kaurav. Hideous Pishach drink from the river of blood, which resembles the very Vitrani. Both armies have lost more men than on any previous day of the war. But once more, the day indubitably belongs to the Pandavas. Bhim, Ghatotkach, Arjun, Abhimanyu are its heroes. Duryodhan is forlorn again. His hopes of last night dashed. There is no celebration in the Pandav camp either. Arjun and his brothers mourn Irvan. Next chapter, Duryodhan's despair. On his way back to the Kaurav camp, Duryodhan sees all is dead, lying dismembered on the earth. Again and again he sees Bhim killing his brothers. He finds Karan waiting for him in his tent and breaks down sobbing. Desperately he cries to his friend, "These last 3 days I have seen that monster kill 24 of my brothers. Their screams ring in my ears and I have no peace. I see my mother crying for her sons, but Bhishma has not killed even one Pandav, and I fear he doesn't mean to. Each day we return from the war, routed again, and every night Bhishma says the same thing to me, that my cousins are invincible. I cannot stand it anymore, Karan. We must do something quickly or we shall all be dead." Duryodhan, of course, has no inkling of the secret Karan now carries, which has changed him so profoundly. The Kaurav believes his friend is eager to take the field against the Pandavas. He does not know these 8 days have been a miraculous respite, a God sent to Karan, and a time when he has really begun to think of the Pandavas as his brothers. Duryodhan has no clue of the secret that bisects Karan's life. He who once longed to take the field against Arjun hardly dares let the thought enter his mind now, but prays that Bhisham will save him from the exigency, though deep inside him he knows it is inevitable. Karan can reveal nothing of his secret to Duryodhan, least of all when the war is being lost so swiftly. Now he says bravely, "I can't bear to watch you cry. There is nothing I want more than to see a smile on your lips. Don't forget I'm here to fight for you, to die for you if I must. I grieve for your brothers, my prince. What can I say to soften your pain except that their deaths were destined? All that happens in this world is by fate. Life, death, everything, and there's nothing you or I can do to change what fate has written. How I wish I could comfort you or bring your brothers back to life. Nothing saddens me as much as to see you like this." Karan too has tears in his eyes. Duryodhan says, "Drona, Bhishma, Krip, Shalya, none of them fight to kill the sons of Pandu. They raise the enemy army, but that is not enough. The Pandavas are that army's soul. If the soul isn't put out, they will win. It happens every day. We come home defeated. Our soldiers more terrified than ever because they have seen their comrades die. Even our great Kshatriyas are dispirited. No one believes we can win this war anymore. How I wish you were on the field, Karan. How difficult, how different things would have been. You wouldn't hesitate to kill Arjun or the others." Karan says somberly, "Your Pitama loves his grandsons too much. Besides, I'm not sure that at his age he can kill them even if he wanted to. There is one solution. Tell Bhisham to stay away for a day or two and I will come to fight. I will hunt just Arjun. When I have killed him, the others' hearts will break. I will leave the field again and your Pitama can win the rest of the war. Arjun is the key to victory. Why do you think Krishna chose to be his Sarthi? and not Yudhishthir's or Bhim's. If we can kill Arjun, the rest will be easy. Nothing in his voice or his face gives away what it cost Karan to make that offer. Duryodhan stares at him for a moment, then he gets up. I will go and speak to Pitama. Bhishma is waiting for him. He has been expecting his grandson, usually so direct. Duryodhan is uncomfortable with having to tell his grandsire what he has come for. He folds his hands, then sits down near Bhishma, but never looks into the patriarch's eyes. Bhishma waits for him to speak. Pitama, there is no Kshatriya on earth like you. When you took command of my army, I was certain victory would be mine, and I thought it would take no more than a day or two, but we have fought 8 terrible days, and my certainties were mere dreams. You haven't killed even one. Bhishma begins to speak, but Duryodhan holds up his hand so he may finish. Your love for Pandu's sons is stronger than your love for me. I know you kill 10,000 soldiers every day, but that will not win the war for us. Because they kill more of our men than you kill theirs. And finally, this war will not be won or lost by the ordinary soldiers who die, but by the lords of men that do. He lowers his voice. Pitama, I have lost 24 brothers already, all killed by that beast. Weren't they your grandsons too? Were their lives cheaper than my cousins' lives? That they can die but not the Pandavas? On whose side do you fight, O Bhishma? On theirs or mine? If you will not attack Yudhishthir and his brothers, I beg you, relinquish your command, let Karan take the field tomorrow. Having said what he found so hard, Duryodhan falls quiet. Bhishma sighs. He says in his slow, sad way, why are you so cruel to me every day, Duryodhan? Here I am at this bloody yajna for your sake, and the yajna pashu, the sacrificial animal, as I, and you still doubt my love for you? You wound me so casually with your accusations. Instead, why don't you face the truth? I do my best, but I cannot kill the Pandavas. Even if my heart was set on killing them, I would not be able to. Krishna is with them. The armies of Devlok could not harm the sons of Pandu. Duryodhan, the root of your troubles is that you do not realize who Krishna is. You think of him as Pandav's cousin or as the prince of Dwarka. You are engulfed in such darkness that you don't recognize the lights of lights when he stands before you. It is God you are fighting, poor child, the master of all things, the lord of galaxies, the king of time, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of not just us, but the worlds. He showed himself to you in Hastinapur, so you might believe, and you fell down in fear when you saw him like that. Yet later you choose to ignore what you saw and accused him of performing a conjuring trick to deceive you. Ah, my son, you are so stubborn and so afraid that I fear you will submit to Krishna only in death. What can Karan or I or anyone else do for you? Duryodhan, the dying and the defeat are not on Kurukshetra, but in your own heart. Duryodhan sits very still. Bhishma says, let me fight tomorrow and watch me burn their army. I will be a fire among the dry trees of summer, and the earth shall never forget how Bhishma fights. Now go and sleep, my child. You must be strong for battle, and let me rest as well, so I can show you in the morning how much I do love you. Bhishma lies down on his bed and turns his back on Duryodhan, mollified by his grandfather's promise. Duryodhan leaves the tent. He doesn't see the tears Bhishma sheds. For him, for his slain brothers, for all the men who have lost their lives, and most of all for Duryodhan's immortal soul, plunged in darkness, its final ruin drawn near. Later that night, another Kshatriya who has taken no part in the war of Kurukshetra lies awake long after he has left Duryodhan's tent. Karan lies roiled in his bed. He does not cry for himself that he had such a cruel burden thrust upon him. the knowledge of who he was. He weeps for Duryodhana, that his cause was a lost one, and only defeat and death could reward his struggle. Yet Karan chooses to stay at his friend's side, even at this impossible time. Duryodhan still believes that if one man on earth hates the Pandavas as much as he himself does, it is Karan. How can Karan confess to him that? Now his hatred has turned into a love that has wrought a miracle in his spirit. Changed the way he saw the world. How can he tell Duryodhan that now Karan loves Arjun and his brothers more than Bhishma does? That as nothing else would break his mind's heart, Karan, whose life has been a long injustice from its first moments, cannot bring himself to do the thing his body cries out to run away from Kurukshetra until the war is over. No, he will stay, he will fight Arjun and his other brothers. He knows life will not spare him that final trial, that last ordeal before he finds death's release. Karan does not cry for himself, as he well might. He is so used to suffering that he feels hardly any pity for himself. He cries for Duryodhan because, like Bhishma and Drona, he knows Duryodhan will lose this war and his life with it. Karan knows who Krishna is and that victory will come inevitably to those that fought on the avatar's side. But who can make Duryodhan see the truth? No one on earth, not even Krishna, who had revealed the shadow of his Vishwaroop to the Kaurava. Duryodhan rushes headlong towards an abyss, and Karan, whose heart has been exorcised by the truth, will not abandon him. This night, like every other night of the war, Karan lies staring into death's very face. He will not allow fear to master him. We will stop the reading over here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.